Transgender Laird is suing the NHS after it refused to carry out a third sex change surgery. Lady Samantha Kane, who was born male, now styles herself as Lady Cabisdale after buying a £5 million Scottish castle. Is thought to be the only person in Britain to have changed gender 3 times. Ms Kane, who was born male, had surgery in 1997 to become Samantha before having it reversed and taking on the identity of Charles Kane in 2004. She claims doctors at University College London NHS Foundation Trust then refused a request for a third surgery to revert to a woman in 2017, leading to Ms Kane having to have a private procedure in Serbia, which was allegedly botched. Blimey. Well, let's find out whether or not somebody should get support in these situations. Venice Allen, women's rights campaigner and research assistant to Baroness Claire Fox, joins me now. Venice, very good evening to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. So, is it right that this person, I mean, I suppose you can have sort of one go at it and then change, but should you be able to change back, change again? How much NHS treatment should you be able to get?
None. I don't think the NHS should fund surgeries for people's mental health problems.
Oh, so do you take the view, though, that there are people who, for whatever reason, feel that they do need to change their physical sexual identity on the basis of their mental state of mind, or do you not think that anybody can be trans?
I mean, I don't believe in transgenderism. I know that for a fact that there are people who think they need this surgery, and I'm also pretty sure there are some people who've had these surgeries and they feel after all the end of their lives that it is a success for them. But I also know, and I've met people who've had surgery and drug treatments and they really deeply regret it. Like this man clearly has a lot of problems. He wants 3 different sets of surgery and it's just getting worse for him physically.
I mean, I do understand perhaps, the concerns over the NHS providing this kind of treatment. But then on the other hand, if somebody wants to have it privately, is it their choice or is it your choice as to whether they have it? So,
I know, I think if it's private, we can do all sorts of things privately, can't we?
So privately, if somebody wants to change their sex privately, you think that's okay, but not on the NHS?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, so I think that helps because I think, from understanding this point of view, do you think, though, that this is, I mean, is it a mental health issue? Is it something that people need to have assistance with in terms of, how they cope with it? Because I guess if you are happy with your sexual or your sexuality...
Not sexuality, gender identity. Yeah.
Yes, no, I understand that. But I mean, a lot of people sort of mix all these various things together and they assume, so, okay, so you would say that gender identity, you're either physically male, physically female, and there's no way that you could be or possibly wish to change?
Well, you can obviously wish what you like. I think we're selling people a lie by saying that if you have this genital surgery, you're going to get a vagina, because it's not a vagina. A vagina is a passageway from the vulva to the cervix to the womb, whereas a man's genital surgery, I don't know if it's early enough, it's late enough in the evening to talk about these things, but it's a whole going nowhere. It's a whole going nowhere.
Well, I understand that, but then there are, many issues, and I suppose that's the difference between the physical and the mental. So you would say that anybody who is trans... are you defining them as having some kind of mental health issue as opposed to having something that they perhaps need some assistance with rectifying for their own lives?
I mean, I think they definitely need assistance because if you think that you're the opposite sex, you obviously need some kind of assistance like psychotherapy or whatever.
But do you not say that, I mean, in the past, a lot of people, before we had, for example, same-sex marriage, a lot of people seem to think that if you... were in a same-sex relationship, that was also some kind of mental issue that you could perhaps be helped to avoid. Are you of that view, or do you think that we've had that conversation now and we can all move on and everybody's happy with same-sex partnerships and relationships and all that sort of business?
James, you're comparing loving somebody and making love to somebody to inverting your penis on the NHS.
I'm not comparing it. What I'm trying to understand is and this is where it becomes complicated, because if you're trying to say that somebody who feels as if they are the wrong sex and they are trying to rectify that in their lives physically, you're absolutely right. They are born physically a male or born physically a female, and then through surgery they can rectify that situation, or they can change that situation. For some people, it's been extremely helpful, and as you say, for maybe a very small percentage, that they've regretted those decisions. But I'm just trying to work out whether or not it's valid, because how can we possibly go into somebody's mind to work out whether or not they are male or female?
No, we don't need to go into somebody's mind to know if they're male or female. It's in every single cell in our body, in our DNA. You're kind of like, gender and sex are different, but gender, I don't see what's good about gender. Like, sex is real, and then all the other things that you might think are associated with that sex, like the stereotypes, that's gender, right?
Well, I understand that. Do you think, though, that we in this country have not had a proper discussion, because it's become so polarised and so toxic that you can, first of all, you can end up having a row or an argument about it. It goes on to the old socials. It becomes then trailed. It then becomes something which is very awkward. And it means that it does become toxic, because then you can cross the line and then become perhaps, offensive towards people. You can perhaps have a view that other people don't necessarily agree with. I mean, I'm assuming that you would accept that there are a whole range of spectrum of views, and there's also a different conversation to be had about the trans debate, and then also what the NHS should provide. I mean, for example, I've taken the view that I'm not sure necessarily that people should be able to have cosmetic surgery on the NHS.
I don't think so either.
Having said that, if somebody is born with I don't know, certain kinds of deficiencies or deformities or something, which have really impacted their lives, as opposed to just purely cosmetic, just because they feel like it, or they'd feel, they looked in the mirror and think they're old and think that they should have some kind of lift or other. If somebody's life can be helped by surgery, then I would say definitely it can or should be provided on the NHS. So there's always sort of like margins, aren't there?
Sure. Can we just go back to what you're talking about, the toxic conversation? Because
yes,
I didn't get a chance to talk about that. Certainly I agree with you that it has been a very toxic conversation, and we haven't really had the conversation enough. But I'd like to say that, just women like me, I'm an ex-Labour Party member. I was just trying to have a conversation about a particular legislation that was coming through. We are met with violence. We try and have a meeting. The venue is inundated with complaints. Actual aggressive young men and women turn up, trying to sometimes actually succeeding in times of physically assaulting us.
I think that's a real problem, that we can't have a grown-up conversation in the way that it did take. And I know that I've drawn the parallel.
We want a grown-up conversation.
Well, yes, exactly. But I think, I suppose there are some elements of what you've said that some people in society would find either offensive or hurtful.
Sure, but can I just say, I find it offensive and hurtful for a male, a man or a boy to say that they're a woman because they like makeup, or because they like shiny things, or because they feel submissive, or because they don't feel like a proper man. Do you know what I'm saying? That's offensive to me. But I don't go outside their meetings and their parties and their social media and try and hurt them.
But I suppose part of the issue is that we all live our lives in different ways, and therefore to allow people to live their lives in a way that ultimately it comes down to safety, which is why I know that people talk about, safe spaces and all this sort of business. And I think it has become very toxic, and I don't really mind whether somebody has the same view as me or somebody has a different view from me. Yeah. I think until or unless we have conversations where we're able to have proper conversations about, well, how does society deal with this, and how does society get over it? In the same way that, as I said, 20, 30, 40 years ago, people had extremely toxic conversations about same-sex relationships and marriage, and we've moved on from that, and I think society has moved on. I think we need to do the same with this. But there we go. Venice, thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening. That's Venice Allen, women's rights campaigner and research assistant to Baroness Claire Fox. So, NHS surgery for carrying out, changing your sex. I'm not sure I agree with that. I feel very uncomfortable with it, but I also feel uncomfortable with some of the conversation that we have about marginalising people in our society as well. But there we go. That's another conversation for another day, because you probably disagree with me. Let's get back to the conversation, though, that we're having about